Folks, welcome. We are live with the Talking Crit live stream / cast. I am Mike Tenkar. My regular partner in crime, Bad Mike, is here.
Hello, everyone.
And joining us to kick off our North Texas RPG Con special guest series, starting, I guess, today.
Yeah, starting
is none other than Jeff Talanian of Astonishing Swordsmen and Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. Say that drunk 10 times fast.
You can just call it Hyperborea for short.
Or Ash. I see a lot of
we call it Ash in my group.
There
we
you
just
go.
call it Ash is where we're at.
Jeff, welcome, man.
Thank you. Greetings,
great
true
to
believers.
Finally having you on here. Yeah, we've been wanting to have you for a while. So.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we've been frequent guests at conventions, usually running tables right next to each other.
Yes.
Whether it's at a Total Con or Gary Con. So it's not like we're not used to conversing.
Yeah, Gary Con, they put us right next to each other for like the last 3 or 4 years until COVID. So yeah, we were con buddies with Jeff.
Right.
We do the thing where, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to get a burrito. Can you watch my booth? We do that all the time.
Exactly. That's why I like to be next to friends.
Yeah.
It works well. I still remember at Total Con, not 2019. It might have been 2018. Having to dig around finding people the right size shirts as you were out to.
Oh yeah.
Read yourself. It's like I know we have it. It's like,
right.
Oh, because the guy's like, well, because I'm leaving in 30 minutes. I will find you the shirt. I did. I probably left you a mess, but at least we made the sale, man. That's
yes.
As a former person that worked retail for 8.5 years, man, you just got to make the sale. Deal with the mess later.
Yeah, because when somebody says they're going to come back, they don't come back, and that's
right.
what you know. I worked retail for years, and that was when they said they were coming back. 95% of the time, they weren't coming back. So when you got them at the booth, you got to keep them at the booth.
Yep.
Well, we're so happy to have you, and this is kicking off our 5 weeks before North Texas. We're going to have a special guest from North Texas, which usually we just have any shlomo that we can pull off up the street, but we decided to class it up a bit. We got Jeff this week. Well, next week we got the shlomo because we got Jason Braun next week. That's gonna be a weird show, and then we have Ben Burns week after. Ben Burns, who's published a lot of Call of Cthulhu, Top Secret. Yeah. He's won the 3 Castles Award 2 years in a row. And local guy started out just coming as a guest, and now he has his own game publishing company. And then the last weeks of the month, we're just kind of waiting to see him because you can't really schedule. Game people are weird. You can't schedule them too far ahead of time because they always got things going on. So I'm gonna pull back the curtain. I'm gonna try to get Steve Winter in here. I think I get Steve Winter in here maybe. Who's a great guy, funny dude. And I don't know who that elusive 5th guest will be. We'll just have to play it by ear.
I don't know. And if not, we have our utility infielder Laramie standing in the wings.
Yeah, Laramie's he's our pinch hitter. If case we have to get somebody, we can always have Laramie. Laramie's great. But yeah, Jeff, we're going to talk to you a little bit about. I don't know really where Eric and I. And this is pulling back the curtain way back. Our show discussion is literally 5 minutes before the show, like, yo, what's up, dude? That's pretty much our show discussion. And people are appalled.
And wait, time out. Before we even delve into that, we didn't even have the normal show discussion today because you had a discussion, and then Jeff and I did the medical catch-up for 2020 on my part. But you were dealing with the North Texas RPG Con boss man. And there's something that we got to talk about. You got to talk about, and then there's going to be a link that I'm going to have to throw up into the chat.
Yeah, well, let's do that before we get into it, Jeff. So everything's a little late around North Texas this year. Although we are really seeing some big numbers with attendance, and we're getting a little freaked out because we thought we might have double last year. Last year we had about 60 people. We thought, some people show up, but everybody's getting their shots, man. Everybody's getting their shots, and they want to go to cons. And every day I see a post on the North Texas page on Facebook. Hey, I got my shots. I'm coming. I have private IMs constantly. Hey, I wasn't going to come, but I got my shots. I want to come.
Right.
People are stir crazy and they're ready to get the hell out of the house, and they want to hang out with nerds. And now today the CDC came out and said, hey, if you're with other vaccinated people and you're outdoors, take your mask. You don't have to wear a mask.
Right.
I mean, so they're loosening up restrictions all the time. So good news. We're seeing a lot of people that are really that are probably going to come that we didn't think were going to come, but we're behind on a lot of stuff. So one of the things we're behind on is the raffle. We usually have a raffle. We usually have it set up like January. I mean, we've got it way ahead of time, but everything was a little slow this year. Doug still has stage 4 colon cancer. He still takes chemo. It's never going away. So he's, he has chemo issues. We have COVID issues. We had everything going on. So we just got the raffle up today. And so Doug went back to the safe, and we have a literal safe here. It's like a big giant gun safe with no guns in it. It's just got D&D stuff in there.
Well, real valuable stuff. Come on.
It's valuable. Yeah, it's valuable.
Yeah, that really is.
But we didn't remember the combination. Well, we remember the combination. We didn't know how many turns left or right. So we're sitting there like fools for like an hour. I finally cracked the safe because I'm awesome. And so I got it open. So he pulled a bunch of stuff out. He didn't really ask me. And I'm like, I don't think we can get the raffle money that this stuff's worth if we just auctioned it. But Doug, God love the guy. He just loves the convention. He loves people. He doesn't care. He just wants to put up really nice stuff. So Eric's going to post a link in here. So we call them squeaky cage tickets because, little known fact, PayPal is not allowed to do raffles. You're not allowed to do raffles on PayPal. And we got dinged on that about 5 or 6 years ago because we put raffle in the title. So what we do is you're buying what's called a squeaky cage ticket. We have a little ticket holder thing that turns and it makes a squeaky noise. So you're buying a squeaky cage ticket. You're not buying a raffle ticket. But they're $5 each. Some of the stuff people win just putting in like $20. We had somebody win one year putting in $5. They won a really nice $100 dice set that was like carved of wood. $5, one ticket. So you don't have to be present to win. We're going to be selling these for the next 5 weeks and at the con. Eric has put up the link there.
It's a long link, folks. I'm going to do a shortened link that will make it a bit easier to remember. So
okay.
Let Mike, you can continue talking.
I have a few of the items here because I'm rebagging them. They're in kind of yucko bags, but we have about a dozen items. One of the items we have every year is a free trip to NTRPG Con, which we cover $700 of either plane fare or hotel room or gas if you drive here. I mean, it's a good. The person who won last year, she comes every year, so she's going to have a free trip this year. Is awesome. But here's some of the stuff Doug pulled out of the thing. We have a Greyhawk supplement second print. You can see by the GK there, Gary and K, or Gygax K. That's what they did before they had the TSR. Beautiful shape. That's one of the items there. That by itself is worth several $100s. First print Blackmore. Once again, really beautiful shape. Oh, look at this. I wonder if we know this guy. Here's a Castle Zagyg. Now, these are getting like so hard to find online because why, Jeff? Because there's not anymore, correct?
Right. They were there was a very small amount printed, and the project was shut down by Gary's widow.
Yes, and they literally had to destroy copies, didn't they? At the end of the year, they had to. I mean, they blew them. I remember when they blew them out, they were selling them for like $20 or $40 a piece, and I remember buying a bunch of them. But
insane. By the way, folks, the shortened link is tenkars-tavern.games/NTRPG Squeak. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can get your squeaky wheel tickets by going to tenkars-tavern.games/NTRPG Squeak. There. Nice
Charlie, I believe it was between 300 and 500 were printed. But Jeff may know more than that, but I believe it was closer to 500 than it was.
Yeah, Steve Chenault would know best. It may be as much as 700. Originally, her rule was because she wanted to shut it down before we ever did it, but decided to let it go to a limited degree. And originally, her rule was she was only going to let 1,000 be printed. And then she changed it to a date of a shutoff, that there would be no more sold after a certain date.
Right.
So, Stephen had to sort of dance around her to accommodate, her changing perspectives.
It's a beautiful box set. I one of the greatest tragedies of gaming. I mean, you could list your 10 tragedies of gaming. Somewhere in my top 10 is the fact that Jeff was not allowed to finish the series, because this is going to be a whole series.
And one of the funny, and I've told this story before, one of the funny things about it was, originally by our outlines, Gary only wanted me to develop the wilderness outside the castle and the castle itself for the first set, and save levels 1 through 3, which also included a couple of sub levels, so it would have been like 5 levels really for the next box set, right? And Gary and I had this huge back and forth argument about it, because I was convinced that we had to put level 1 of this dungeon.
Oh, thank goodness you won that argument, Jeff. Thank goodness you
won.
Right.
And finally he threw his hands up in the air with me and said, fine, have it your way. And I was like, Gary, these people I said, I have been waiting for this since I was a kid reading Dragon magazine when you used to talk about it. So we have to do this. It has to be in the first set. And thank God we did.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
God.
God.
I mean, this stuff, you've probably written stuff that's can no longer ever be published anywhere, right? It's just in the vault forever. Right. I bet.
Yeah, it's just
that's too bad.
Dead.
We'll come back to that, because I want to hear the story about that. But let me go over one item here. We also have an OCE box set, white box. It's complete. It's a 7th print. I checked it. It's absolutely beautiful shape. I don't know why this would get $500 or more in auction. I don't know why Doug's put it in the raffle. He's weird. He loves the fans too much. He loves you guys too much. And then I didn't bring everything here, just a few items. We also have, this is a rarity, Swords and Wizardry white box. This was Brave Halfling 2010. There were probably only 3 to few hundred of these. This will never see the light of day again, because Brave Halfling no longer has a license.
I ran that for my kids. That has a nice little adventure in it by Jim Johnson called the Eldritch Oak. And it's a fun little adventure in addition to the rules that are in there.
Jason Braun did the artwork on here. I just realized.
No, Jason did the artwork? I didn't realize that. I had 2 copies. I gave away my second copy to one of the guys. I had them dice off my old gaming group to. I always give stuff away when we get together once a year, so that was one of the things I gave away. And then they're like, "Oh my God, have you looked us up on a Noble Knight?"
Yeah,
I'm like,
yes.
No, why? It's like going for almost as much as the original collector's edition box.
I just showed you about $1,000 worth of stuff that's going in our Squeaky Cage ticket. I didn't even count the dragon number. We're gonna have a dragon 3, a dragon 4.
Yeah,
we have some other stuff. Doug's crazy. He doesn't understand the value of items. This is all stuff I would have auctioned personally, and I would have raffled. I would have thrown like dice sets and crappy craps up there. But no, Doug actually put good stuff up there. So yeah, it's. Let's put it this way. This year, I don't usually buy tickets. I'm gonna buy my grandkids tickets. So if they win the white box, it'll probably be on my shelf, not theirs. But so anyway, this helps finance the con. We do not make money every year. We lose money. We do the auction at the con. That helps out quite a bit. We do silent auctions. But one of the big things is the raffle, and we always come through. The problem this year is we just started so late. We only have the raffle up this week, so we only have 5 weeks to get money for that. So if you can kick in $5, $20, I mean, we have people win multiple times. There's a couple of guys that every year, Zach Glazer's one of them, that buy like $100 worth of tickets, and they win like 2 or 3 items. I mean, they don't just win one item.
Yeah, so I saw Bill Webb do it once too.
So we really appreciate the $5 here and there. And like I said, it's not a raffle; it's a Squeaky Cage giveaway. But we'll probably even put some. And we usually have people that donate stuff the day of, like, hey, I've got here's some miniatures that are painted by me, and it's somebody famous. Like, can you do this? Like, yeah. So we'll probably even have more stuff. But we have a dozen items now. I think the list is there at the PayPal. If you click the PayPal, no, actually it's not. Another place I want to let you know about is the Facebook page. We have a North Texas RPG Con Facebook page. That's where we have all the information about the raffle and stuff. So if you're on Facebook, check that out.
Earlier today, I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, no
Somebody
kidding.
went insane. So, folks, I will also put up a link on the blog probably tonight or tomorrow, and I will. it will have the North Texas RPG Con logo, and if you click on it, it'll take you to the squeaky wheels. So we'll make sure people get a chance to get in for the fat loot.
Yes, fat loot with the PHAT. And so I want to do one more personal thing here before we get to Jeff. That's Eric just told me we have had a huge jump in subscriptions this week.
Yes,
and we're really
since we went live, even more.
Yeah,
we're at 410 subscribers. That means that we actually, and maybe it's the Jeffiness, but we picked up 12 people today.
Whenever we have somebody big time like Jeff on here, we get all of a sudden we get all these people that discover us. So yeah, we're not stupid. We have people like Jeff on because we know he's going to bring in the.
Oh no, dude, we are stupid. Let's not say that we aren't stupid. But we certainly are stupid. However, we really enjoy getting this out. Here, we're going to talk about stupidity. When we hit 500 subscribers, I'm giving away to listeners that will be in a live episode like this, our live audience. I'll be giving away $500 in drive-through RPG Now gift certificates because it's your money anyway.
Yeah.
So we might get there by North Texas at
Am I eligible? Am I eligible to win? Am I eligible?
No, you're not. You're not eligible to win. Neither is Joe nor his brother, because his brother's won enough.
He's won all kinds of crap. That's true.
Yeah,
stop winning our stuff, man. No.
So Joe's brother can't win either.
But anyway, I wanted to say one thing real quick. So we started doing this weekly last year. We have not missed a week, and I can't remember when we started. September, even when I was a month in South Padre Island. Eric and I had talked years and years about having a show, and we're going to have the show. We just talk about whatever we want. We're going to piss everybody off. We're going to drink during the show. We're just going to drink on the show, man. We're going to.
And we have.
And we do. We know. And
by the way, I've been reprimanded by one of our listeners for it's a great show and great conversation, but they can't watch it around their kids because of the language. I'm sorry, I'm fucking sorry, but it's just
we're sorry about that, but that's the kind of show. But I'm really happy. We did not think we'd get subscriptions because we're thinking we're just doing this for fun, and a lot of it was because Eric had such a rough year. We said let's just do something we've always wanted to do because we've talked about this for years. We go to cons and go, man, we're going to get our own podcast, and we're just going to talk about crazy shit and just do this.
We know people.
No, we know all these people.
Nothing.
Oh. Yes. Well, no, it's about something. But here, what it is usually, assuming we have a great special guest like Jeff. We'll talk with Jeff and we'll find out about the upcoming projects that Jeff is involved with and what's going on with Jeff. And you guys get to ask questions like, is there any chance that Castle Zagyg will ever be completed? I'll answer that for Jeff. Probably not. Not unless the kids get control of the project.
Is Gail healthy?
But even then, is there going to be a market for it? Yeah, I'd love to see it.
Unless it's 5e, it'd be 5e.
No, it's like
let's just go there then, because that's a great subject. Because Jeff is one of the few people on Earth that's intimately. This is an absolutely beautiful box set. It's got all these books in there. It's got a gorgeous map. My one complaint about the box is because this is a Chenault thing, and I don't know why Chenault does. The box is cheap. It will fall apart. It will definitely fall apart. And that's why you can always tell one that's never been used because it's a perfect shape. The ones that have been used at all, the box fall apart. But it's a beautiful box set. So tell us how did this come about? I mean, you're Jeff Talanian. You're sitting around one day. Do you get a phone call from Gary Gygax? I think you've told me this story before, but I would love to hear it again.
Yeah, I had been working for Gary developing the Yiggsburgh project, which was a city that basically takes the place of Greyhawk City as the neighboring settlement to the legendary dungeon, right? And so Gary had put out a call for freelance writers to work on this project. And originally it was to have 18 sectors to it. And so ideally, in Gary's mind, there would be 18 developers and he would provide a sort of Bible to each one of them. And there was like a sort of overarching Bible for the city. And then each neighborhood had its own sort of individualized guidelines. So I luckily got into this project, writing for Gary. And what happened is as these things normally happen, there were a few people who basically flaked out of the project. And so Gary, at this point, it was deep into the project, didn't want to look for new developers. So he was looking internally at the group of us who were already writing, and I volunteered right away. And so now I'm developing 2 sections of the city. And it as the months went on, I ended up taking on 4 sections of the city. And I made my deadlines with everything, which was really important to Gary. And there were some people who did amazing work, but they were a little slow to produce. It's typical in writing, right? And especially in role-playing games. And so Gary was originally working with Rob Kuntz to do the dungeon itself, the castle and dungeon complex. And as you guys know, and it's you had that Greyhawk supplement right there. It was by Gygax and Kuntz. Rob and Gary had worked closely together back in the 70s and maybe into the early 80s. And Rob was Gary's co-DM. They used to both dungeon master.
And he was a very young age. I mean, Rob was somewhat of a prodigy. I mean, he was like 18, 19, and he was basically Gary's DM, which is just for Gary to let him do that's high praise. Now, Rob was also kind of a flake, but genius and flakiness kind of go
right. Very fertile imagination, great writer. Rob did amazing work back then, and so they ended up butting heads. And they had different visions of how the project should be managed, how the project should be presented, and so forth. So they ended up splitting ways. And so Gary was then looking for someone else to develop this with him. Because, there were a lot of people then who would have said, why doesn't Gary just do the whole thing himself? Because he was still writing every day, producing tons of words. Well, the truth of the matter is Gary was very passionate about his legendary adventures. And he had some other irons in the fire at the time. He had a card game called King of England, King of France that he was very passionate about. And so he was working on a science fiction version of Legendary Adventures called Legendary Asteroids. And so he was really working on that. And so when he needed a new developer to work on it, they came to me, him and Gary and Steve Chenault, who's the publisher, and asked me if I would like to co-author Castle Zagyg with Gary Gygax. And, I was like...
You're like, let me think about it. I'll call you one day and we'll...
Right. I'll mull it over. So, of course I accepted. And so I found myself in this, impossible situation working for a man whom I'd idolized growing up. I'd idolized Gary and Stan Lee. Those were like my Mount Rushmore type of creatives that I loved, growing up as a kid. And I would have never imagined that I would, actually work with one of them. I got to meet Stan a few times, but to actually work with Gary, it was just one of the delights of my life and just a complete pleasure.
So I mean, I've actually read through it. I don't know. It's hard to tell where Gary begins or it ends and you begin, or where vice versa. Did Gary give you notes? Because it's very Gygaxian. I don't know if you deliberately chose that tone of voice to write the adventure in, but it's extremely Gygaxian. It's one of my favorite things that Gary and Jeff Talanian wrote, which is the only thing they wrote. But I mean, it's very Gygaxian, which I thought was really cool.
Yes. So he provided me outlines, but he also provided me with set pieces. and set pieces were like, this is an encounter that's going to be in this part of the dungeon or this part of the castle itself. So I extrapolated off of those. I was studying his writing when I wasn't writing. I was studying, and so not just his, of course, his famous G series and Lost Caverns of Zagyg, but also going into his Gord the Rogue novels and stuff like that. I was really sort of immersing myself into the way Gary executed the written word, his sort of Gygaxian prose, if you would.
Right.
And even his book on game mastery, just everything that I could get my hands on, and just studying how he did things, because I didn't want people to say, oh, this is the part that obviously Gary didn't write. I wanted it to be a sort of a blending, and sort of, I felt like it was my responsibility to morph my style to his, so that it could be seamless.
That's a valid way to look at it, and that's a good approach.
Yeah, I think it works. I think it works really well. Now, all in all, so you talked about when Rob was with the project. He wrote one module, Dark Chateau, if I believe.
Yes.
So there was Yiggsburgh, which was the city, and that was that written by just Gary alone, or Gary and somebody?
Well, so the hardcover book, Gary developed mostly himself. He did have some help, and he did have some people that gave him advice and help, but that was mostly him. But then it was one hardcover book, but what he wanted was to take the city sectors that are presented in that and really flesh them out, each individual, like the palace where the mayor lives, a university district, a storehouse district, all kinds of a moat house district, everything you can imagine, and then the suburbs outside of the city itself. So he was really keen on seeing that developed to a great degree, really. And it was really, reading it, and seeing how he wanted it presented. It was really, I felt like it was really Fritz Leiber inspired, the way he was doing it.
Mm-hmm. And there's for those who find that's actually a great book too. It's got a really beautiful Darlene map in there. He got Darlene out of retirement to draw the map for that. And I think there was 4 books, like you said. There was one for the moat, the storehouse district. Was there 3 or 4 that were published? I can't remember. Those were also published too. They're really good also. If you ever find those, they're very good for fleshing out areas of cities in your campaign. And then of course there was the Castle Zagyg, and I guess that was it, right? Just those items.
Well, actually, no. We did have a folio.
The folio, yes.
Yeah, it was called the Eastmark Gazetteer, which presented some more of the wilderness area, and it was giving a little glimpse of what was to come with the castle complex itself.
I auctioned my copy off years ago. I don't know why. I needed money, I think. I don't know.
I have this signed and numbered. I have a funny story about that. I have the number 2. Gary signed and numbered, I think it was 100 of them at Gen Con when we were there. And so this is kind of funny. So this is a typical Steve Chenault story. So we had Gary signing them, right? One through 100, 1 of 100, 2 of 100. And so I ended up with number 2 of 100. But the funny story is what happened to number 1. Well, Steve had these piles of them, and these were the ones that were supposed to go out to sell to the general public. Mm-hmm. And then there was the special 100 that he was going to do something with.
Right.
Well, he accidentally sold number 1 to some random customer. So we don't know who that ended up going to.
Some random guy ended up with.
Yeah, so someone ended up with that.
I've never seen it pop up, because I have that marked in my eBay, because
right.
I feel I did sell it to a fan. I sold it to my buddy Mike Carey, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. He was a huge Gygax fan, so he bought my copy, and unfortunately he passed away. So now that I don't know where that copy's going to be, and so yeah, I felt the need to auction it off. I don't know why, because I'm a huge fan of all the Zagyg stuff. But yeah, that's a great. that's a great story, and I mean, it must have really hit you bad hard when he passed away, because
I was shocked.
this is going to be a huge project that was going to go on for years and have quite a few publications. I remember seeing one of the ads for it and Troll Lord Game Publications, and I'm sitting there going, "Dang, this is a lot of books coming out," because because it was going to be about every section. Like I said, only 3 or 4 came out that were about sections of the city, but there was going to be one for every single section of the city, plus how many more box sets that detailed the entire cast.
It was probably going to be. We hadn't settled on it exactly but it was probably going to be 5 box sets.
Wow. Imagine that. That would have been. I mean, this box set's amazing. You could get a year or more of adventure out of just this box set. I mean, it's crazy.
Sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it's very much something you would say this is what Gary wrote, which is I just think it's amazing that your prose sounded exactly like Gary, Jeff. I mean, it really there's not a part. There's really not a part where you can sit there and go, "Oh, well, Jeff wrote this." I know Jeff.
Well,
wrote
yes. I mean, I'm typical. I'm my own worst critic, because now I can look back at it and I know sections of it that I look at it and I cringe.
Right. But I mean, I mean, look what Gary did with, let's say, like the G series. So people forget those modules are like 10 pages long, 8 pages, but they were just amazing. He put so much into his descriptions. The only other writer that reminds me of him a lot is Ed Greenwood can do that, where he can just have a paragraph and just totally paint a picture, because Ed can do that. Ed can do that where, like, wow, he wrote 1 page and I felt like I could adventure in this world forever. Gary would do that. He, the G series, even though it's short, just some of the passages are so memorable, and some of the ways he wrote them. And so I think if you have the $300 or $500, whatever they're going for now for the Castle Zagyg, I think there's an illegal PDF going around of it. I have a copy, so yes, there is. Well. But yes, if you get a chance, check it out sometime. It's just really worth looking at. It just really stinks that whole project got torpedoed. Yeah,
it is sad. Because the sad part for me is I feel like with each passing year, I very much feel that 5th edition has done great things for the hobby, right? Even though I don't necessarily play it, I recognize that it has brought in a whole new influx of gamers, right?
Right.
But the thing is Gary's name isn't really associated with D&D anymore.
Right.
And
we talk about that a lot.
Years, this younger generation coming up, or they don't even have to be younger, because you hear about guys in their 30s and 40s who are gaming for the first time, that they maybe played Diablo in the 90s or Baldur's Gate or something, or different fantasy, computer role-playing games. And they never played tabletop before, and they're playing tabletop for the first time. Well, naturally they just playing the game, and they're not interested in the history of the hobby. I mean, I've probably played Monopoly off and on my whole life since I was 5 years old, and I have no idea who created it. So I think with the passage of years, the unfortunate side effect of all of this is that Gary's name loses relevance, and that's
Eric and I talk about that a lot. I know you can't really talk about it too much, but Eric and I talk about it, and the Gary's legacy has been grossly mismanaged. And yes, I run into kids every day at conventions that are like, "Who's Gary Gygax?" And they really are meaning it sincerely. They really don't understand who he is, because his name's not on any of the stuff anymore. I mean, all the stuff that's being published now is proposed by WotC, and they know who Mike Burrows is. They know who
Chris Perkins,
Crawford, Jeremy Crawford, but they know these guys. They don't know who Gary Gygax. They have no clue who Gary Gygax is, because his name's been taken off of everything. I mean, everything he ever worked on or did's been killed. So, this is what happens, and you basically when you fall down the memory hole, it's really hard to get back out again. I mean, really, you can't. I know that what Gary did. I mean, really, there's few things that overshadow everything else. And I know he was really passionate about Legendary Adventures, but even if they said, "Hey, we're going to bring back Legendary Adventures tomorrow," I don't think you have 5th edition now. People are like, oh, well, I'm playing 5th edition over here. That's, that's great. I don't know who this Gygax guy is or what Legendary Adventures are. I mean, just like all the momentum was just stopped. And then that was it. It's over. And it's just really, it's an absolute shame that now the legacy's been mismanaged so much that nobody really even knows who he is. And the value of his name has gone down. You can see that by the people who have thought about doing a project and then 86 the project because they're like, well, whatever money I'm having to pay for this is not worth it because the name isn't worth anything anymore.
The name has lost a lot of its cultural reference. And Morgan in the chat brings up, I think Gary's widow owns the IP. Not quite, but she does control the trust. She controls the trust that controls the IP. And she controls the trust because of Gary's will. However, the will is in dispute because there's a second will that, and we discussed this before, I'm not going to go deep into it, but Luke Gygax filed a will in probate court, and it will play out in Wisconsin. It's play out, I think, next month. And it's basically because Gail never actually took her will to probate court. She was operating under it, but it was never actually legally given the okay stamp. She never went to probate court, and she's probably hitting herself for never doing it. Now, the second will, which supposedly is from a later date, signed by Gary, could, in theory, take precedence and would give control to the children, is my understanding. And if the children have control, maybe we'll see some more products that are linked to Gary's legacy. But until that happens, it's under Gail's control. She doesn't necessarily own it, but she controls it. And I actually believe that she controls it, and the profits would have to go to actually the offspring too. But she's in control of it, and she has not really been great about releasing anything to
she's had some great plans. Actually, they're terrible plans, and luckily those never came to fruition. And so it's almost one of those cases where it's better that nothing happens than something happens, because some of the plans she had years ago, people probably forget, but she had some crazy, like one of it was her and her sister were going to make books for kids in schools, and it was in something that Gary was really passionate about, except Gary never did that, and Gary never did choose your adventure books or whatever they were going to. I don't know. It's like I said, it's almost better that she didn't do anything with it, because I don't know what she would have done that she thought was preserving Gary's legacy. But
we're gonna go into a bad rabbit hole, because when it comes to the Gygax Memorial Fund, that's the second thing that she does control. One of the reasons why it's a nonprofit, or 401(c), 40, whatever the hell it is. The reason why it is, one of the reasons why is supposedly it's supposed to be doing a scholarship fund and giving monies toward education, but it never has. So just a little thing.
Well, rather than kick this dog or this can down the road like we've done so many times, we're gonna talk about Jeff a little bit here.
Yes.
So Jeff, he moved on from. Most people would have been crushed by the fact that they could no longer do their live stream, and so. But Jeff said, "No, I'm going forward. I'm gonna have this cool retro clone game called Astonishing, Swordsmen, and Sorcerers of Hyperborea." And Jeff, like me, because we have had lots of conversations about this convention. We are huge fans.
Right.
Pulp
I got my original box set, dude. I'm very proud of my box set.
Oh yeah, the box set was great. That was the original box set. It was great. It had the little paper that fell out. You could never get it all back in. I always loved that. But yeah, it's a game very much inspired by the Weird Tales triplets of Howard and Clark and Clark Ashton Smith and Lovecraft, and I'm huge fans of them also, and I know Jeff is, and I think the game's great. If I wasn't playing the game I'm playing right now, that would the system I'd use, because I just think it's a great system. So how did that come about, or where did you just sit there and say, I'm gonna do my own system here? Why would you think about breaking into the retro clone world?
Well, thank you. So I guess I wasn't thinking as much about quote unquote system as I was thinking about setting, because I was I'm very much inspired by the pulps, and I really I think I had a sort of eureka moment when I was rereading The Shadow Out of Time by H.P. Lovecraft, and I saw the way in in that I don't know if you'd call it a short story or a novella, because that's a really long one. But anyway, when I saw the way he brought together all the worlds of his contemporaries of Howard and Clark Ashton Smith in various allusions in that story, and I thought to myself, this would be a magnificent thing to do, to sort of really blend these different elements together in one sort of pulp fiction sword and sorcery setting. And Hyperborea was something that I was fascinated with, as far as in the Clark Ashton Smith stories, Robert E. Howard's version of Hyperborea, and of course the old Greek myths. I mean, even going back to when I was a teenager back in the 80s, I used to play a play-by-mail game called the Hyborian War, and it was a war game.
Oh, I remember that one. Yes.
Yeah. So I used to always pick Hyperborea, and I never won the game. You would send in your orders, and you would send in orders for troops, and you would send in orders for individual heroes that populated your kingdom. And the whole thing is you were set to have these sort of goals where you are expanding your kingdom and basically trying to take over all the lands of the Hyborian Age. And so I was just fascinated with the pulps from a young age. I always loved Tolkien, and of course, and the various high fantasy authors as well. But my favorite stuff was always the grittier pulp type stuff. I loved Michael Moorcock and Fritz Leiber, Jack Vance, Abraham Merritt. I was reading all of this stuff, and I really wanted to do something. I guess I always saw D&D as a huge melting pot that included those elements, but also included the elements of other more high fantasy authors. And I really wanted to do something that really evoked a specific flavor. But I also wanted to do it with an engine that was familiar to fellow gamers of our generation.
Right.
I've told this before. One of my primary goals when I was writing it was I wanted to write a game that I wanted to play with my beer drinking buddies. I wasn't out to exploit like any kind of like market niche or anything like that, or to figure out like, all right, what can I do to make a lot of money in the role-playing game industry? No, I just wanted to make something that I enjoyed playing with my friends. And then from there, see if other fellow gamers would feel the same way and enjoy it too. So, so on the heels of the aforementioned Castle Zagyg project being canceled, I was left with nothing, after years of working and no compensation.
Wow.
So I shouldn't say no. I got a small trickle amount, some beer and pretzel money for 1 week, take your wife out to dinner type money for after years of work. So anyway, I decided that I wanted to do my own thing, that if I was going to do something next, because I got burnt so bad, and I said, I'm not going to do this again working for somebody else. I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to pass or fail on my own merits. And so I created this game, that first box set. I started writing it in late 2008, and we published in 2012 by the time, because I was working and doing this as a part-time endeavor.
Right.
And so did the box set, and it did really well. I was selling them at conventions and selling them online, and they continued to sell until the point where I realized, like, wow, I'm going to sell out of these. I thought this was going to be something that I think I printed about 1,200 copies of that first box set. And I just figured this was going to be something like, oh, I'm going to have these boxes until I'm retired someday. I'm just going to, I'll sell one every couple of months. But it didn't work out that way. They were gone after a few years. So I started quickly going into a development of the second edition, which we did into a single hardback that sort of added a bunch of new material, added some new classes and spells and monsters and things like that, added more artwork, and went to that second edition hardback. And continue, and in between these, also developing adventure modules that were inspired by the pulps, the authors that we mentioned, Clark Ashton Smith and Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft. And then an amazing thing started to happen, because this was my own little pet project, and I found that other people wanted to write adventure modules for it. And I started to get some submissions, and picking out the ones that I thought best matched my vision of what this setting was, because the setting was my primary focus. And so publishing modules along the way as well. And then so we published the second edition hardback in 2017. And by March or April of 2020, we were sold out of that as well.
Jeez.
So
damn.
So I went right back to the drawing board, and so the plan was to do a sort of reprint of that hardback. But one thing sort of led to another, and I started to commission new art, started to work on layout, started to tinker with some things with the rules. Okay. Until I got to a point where, is this a reprint of this book, or is there's that fine line between, is it the same game or is it a new edition? And right. as the months have gone on, and I have decided that this will be a third edition of the game.
Nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we're going to go to a 2 hardback set. Yeah. So this is the first time I've told anybody in public, except for the guys who've been working on the project. So the big reveal. The big reveal on Talking Crit.
You could have picked a better show to debut that on. Wow. I mean, thanks a lot, but geez. No. Well, I wanted to ask you a question. So, at what point did you realize naming your game Astonishing, Swordsmen, and Sorcerers of Hyperborea was going to be way too long for anybody to say? And did you have an abbreviation in mind? Because, nobody walks around saying they play Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They all say they play AD&D. And we were just talking before the show. So when I talk about the game, I call it ASH, because I'm not going to say Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea 15 times in a conversation. I'll just say ASH or...
Right.
So did you realize that this was just absolutely the worst marketing move you could ever make by naming your game?
Well, yeah. So that is one of the things that I have I've sort of lightly addressed. I'm not abandoning it completely, but I do sort of focus on just calling it Hyperborea. And so in the going forward with the new edition, I'm just sort of simplifying it to that. But I'll never lose the Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers, because they are literally a part of the game, a major component of the game, because that's what it's about. It's about swordsmen and sorcerers. But as far as the name of the game going forward, with just calling it Hyperborea.
Okay,
good idea. I like it.
So I got a lot of stuff going on with it. So doing a 2 hardback set, as opposed to one single book. Right. I have all kinds of new art. New covers, new layout. I have beautiful new paintings in the Charles Lang, who did the cover of our original box set, and he did the cover and the back cover of our second edition hardback. He's done covers for these 2 new books, which I'll be revealing in the near future. We have new interior color plates. Peter Mullen, Val Mayerik.
Nice.
Val Mayerik is he used to draw Conan the Barbarian from
that's an old pro, man. That's a major dude to get on board. Yeah, I remember his savage sort of Conan stuff. He did a lot of inking and drawing.
I think in the comics industry, he's pretty well known for doing like Lobo and stuff like that, and the Demon. So I also brought in David Miller. David Miller, who used to also work for TSR back in the day, and he's going to be doing some color. He's doing some color plates as well. And then I have some additional color plates by Charles Lang, who does the covers. So I have new interior art as well. Working for several months and recently completing is Diogo Nogueira, who has redrawn all the class illustrations for us. 26 different class illustrations. So that's the 4 core classes and then the 22 subclasses.
Wow.
And we have new chapter frames, beautifully done, that are being done by Del Tagler. And it's really exciting.
And when will this debut, you think? Is this going to be a Kickstarter?
Yeah, it's going to be a Kickstarter. I'm reluctant to say an exact date until I see the sort of more things fall into place. But I'm actually hoping for early June. So nice. It may actually coincide with North Texas.
That'd be great. We'll take it. And you're going to be at North Texas. You're a special guest there because
yes.
Doug and I love this dude. So, what are you running at North Texas?
So I'm going to be, I'll be running the same adventure several times. It's called The Vanishing Isles of the Summer King. Now, this is an adventure module that we'll be publishing in the future. It was written by Jonathan Bingham. And Jonathan's got some really wild ideas. It's almost like, picture like Michael Moorcock and Jack Kirby had a love child, okay? And it's so out there. And it's this sort of lost druids island that vanishes and reappears, and there's sort of a lot of extra dimensional type stuff. So it has that sort of blend of fantasy and science fiction. It's really wondermore.
Man, well, there goes some more of my money this year. I've been back at Kickstarters right and left, and here we go. More money out of the wallet. So this is going to be a rough year for my wallet when it comes to Kickstarter. There's just too much. I think everybody, it was weird because last year we give away what's called the 3 Castles Award every year in North Texas, and it's the best item published between September and October of the last year. I'm sorry. The end of September to the beginning of October of the year after. So it's full 12 months. And we only had 3 submissions last year. It's like you would think with COVID, people would just be sitting there and just writing their little heinies off, but there wasn't a lot of projects out there. So we had to cancel the award this year and push the submissions from last year to the next year. So we're not giving an award away for 2021. It'll be for 2022. And then all of a sudden, here we go, 2021, and boom. It's like January, February, March, April have been crazy. We keep getting, Kickstarter after Kickstarter. And just great stuff.
Good stuff.
Oh,
That's the whole thing.
So it's like everybody saved it up. Were they all percolating their thoughts all during COVID? And then once the new year came, they just spilled out? Or
right. I can kind of see it because that sort of reluctance to launch a project in the midst of so much turmoil. And you think you can't help but think is this right or wrong to actually launch a project in the middle of all this going on?
Well, especially there were a lot of people that lost their jobs or their jobs got downsized. So you got a lot of people where money was short, or even if you didn't lose your job, you weren't sure if you were going to have a job. So
discretionary spending comes to a close, right?
Yeah, I think that's why. Smaller Kickstarters, when I say smaller price Kickstarters, we're probably doing pretty well because people are like, well, you know what? I guess I can spend $10 on this, but $75 on a game where I don't know if I'm going to be paying my rent next month.
Right.
We're probably by the time the Kickstarter releases, I could be I could be homeless. Again, people.
Where do I send it to? Who do I mail it to? Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like, P.O. Box this rock. It was that kind of a year. Now I think with 2021, again, we have the immunization. It's coming under control. People are getting a chance to breathe. Even I, feel it, and it's like, I spent 20 years. Not having to worry about things like, I don't know, stress and the other distractions because you just didn't deal with it as an active police officer. pushed it aside. Now, like 2020, it's like, wow, man, I feel like burned out. 2021 seems refreshingly new. It's a new start. So I think that we're going to see a lot of stuff that might have been percolating in the last year start coming out.
Right.
Well,
I mean, that's definitely my case too.
You being a police officer, and then what I know of Jeff was a headbanging Hellraiser back in the day. Now, so how old are you, Jeff? About?
Well, I'm about to turn 50 in next week.
Okay, so and you're a little older than that, Eric.
Son.
I want to see somebody go back in time and film the video where Eric pulls over Jeff's car as Jeff rose through New York City one time, and he's got his hair and he's got the metal thing, and Eric's like, yo, turn the music down, turn the music down.
I just got pulled over 2 days ago. I just got pulled over.
There you go. All right. Well,
but you look like a citizen. You look like a citizen now. You look like a citizen.
Yeah.
Right. Now. The officer who pulled me over looked like he was 12. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I felt really old.
Excuse me, officer, can I see your driver's license?
Yeah, no kidding.
Right. I was calling him sir, and I'm like, this is so strange.
So Eric pulls him over, knocks on the window. This cloud of smoke comes out, and then it's like music, like, yo, citizen, turn down the radio, okay? We're gonna turn down the radio first. And you know why I pulled you over, right? No, man. I mean, this is where skit would write itself. This is midnight auction material right here. I gotta write this skit. This is great.
But it isn't, because here's the thing. He would have looked like my old gaming group did until everybody in their mid-20s started getting real jobs. All right. I
can tell you a story that actually fits this whole scenario. That
do it. Well, it's your show for the first hour. Go for it.
So I was probably about 17 years old, and I had the hair, in either the jean jacket on with all the heavy metal patches on it, or the leather jacket. I don't know which one it was. And so I was driving to this other school to pick up this girl that I had been dating. And so I pulled into the bus loop with my car. A complete moron, right? So I see this cop shouting at me to get out of there. So I pulled some kind of maneuver where I did like a U-turn and tried to park somewhere else where I wasn't really supposed to be. And I've got the hair everywhere. And then he throws on the lights and he gets in back of me, and he's like, and then I realized that the officer who was screaming at me as he came up to my car was a man that I called Uncle Al, because he was great friends with my Uncle Vinny. And so I called him Uncle Al.
Oh boy.
I was that little kid. He didn't know it was me because I hadn't seen him in 5 or 6 years. He knew the last time he saw me, I was probably 9 or 10 years old. And now I have all the hair probably on my face. And so he started, what the hell do you think you're doing? Because I'd pulled a U-turn in the bus loop or something like that. What are you doing? And I looked at him. I said, Uncle Al, it's me, Jeffrey. He looks at me. He says, Jeffrey? He's like, what the hell do you think you're doing? I said, I don't know. I was supposed to pick up this girl. I thought I could park over here instead when I saw you yelling at me. And he's like, Jesus Christ. He said, get the hell out of here and get a goddamn haircut.
And get a haircut, of course. Oh, God.
That's awesome. See, the thing is, my gaming group, all right? I was the clean. There were two of us that were fairly clean cut. My friend Paul was GQ. I was flannel shirts and long shoulder length hair. But everybody else were fucking headbangers, man. Long hair down to their waist. My mother actually cried when my friend Dave cut his hair. She's like, Dave had such beautiful hair. I'm like, Mom, it's a guy. You concerned about a guy's hair? It's like, but it was so beautiful. It was amazing. But they all went corporate. They all went corporate. And I go, union job. And it's like, well, and now I grow the goatee. I tried growing the ponytail in retirement. It didn't happen. It just because my hair doesn't grow.
No, you get a certain age. I did the same thing when I quit my job 17 years ago now. Quit the same year my grandson was born, so I keep track of it. I was major suit and tie dude. And when I quit, I was like, man, I'm going to grow my ponytail back. And no. It's like coming out in patches here and there, and it's not curly anymore. I used to have these beautiful curly locks. The girls would run my hands through their hair, and now it's like just sticking here and it sticks there, and it's just I'm like, just shave the whole damn thing off. Just forget the ponytail stuff. It ain't gonna work. It's just not gonna work anymore, guys.
Yeah, at that time frame, like the early and mid '90s. I was at the San Gennaro Festival in Little Italy with my girlfriend at the time, and just walking around. And again, I had the longer hair, and I would wear the chains, but they were all silver because I was a cheap fuck. I couldn't afford gold. But
you didn't have the gold chains. Hey, go on.
I had the silver cross, the silver, miraculous medal, uber Catholic, and. We're walking along, and the guy's like, "Hey, yo, man, play the game." Like, it's okay. Yo, you can play for free. Dude, that's right. Take whatever you want. I'm like, what? Yo, take whatever you want for your girl. Just take what you want, man. All right? Are we good? I'm like, we're very good. I don't want anything. Thank you so much. And then afterwards, I went, oh shit. I looked at myself in the mirror and went, I look like organized crime. I look like, and to confirm that, 6 months later, go to a strip joint with one of my friends who went corporate out by us. My first time going to a strip joint, we walk in, and the bouncer's like, "Yeah, no problem. Come on in. They get drinks on me." I'm like, "Tony, we can't stay." He goes, "Why?" Because I look like somebody, and I don't know who I look like, but it's gonna get me killed. He goes, "Yeah, I've never gotten free drinks. I come here all the time." I go, "Dude, there was no cover charge. We're getting free drinks." People, and they go, because it isn't me. You go, well, if it's me, I'm afraid because somebody's gonna be like,
you don't be mistaken for like Little Vinny. Oh, Little Vinny, like who's Little Vinny?
No, I'm Big Eric. It's like, well, then why'd you claim?
And then they get on the phone when you're there. Yo, Little Vinny's here. He's in the front row. I just served him some drinks. He'll be waiting when you get here. Yeah,
or even worse. Yo, this guy's passing himself off as Little Vinny. I don't know who Little Vinny is.
That could be.
That was my fear. That's
fear. Tough. Then you're in big trouble. Because then you get a knock on the door one day, and a little 5'5" guy's there, 5'2" guy. Hey, I'm Little Vinny. I heard you've been telling people you're Little Vinny. I didn't tell anybody it was Little Vinny. They just thought I was Little Vinny. I'm not even that little.
I didn't take anything. I took nothing. I took a free beer. Sorry, and a free peek at boobs. But that's really all I did. So.
They start going, you think I'm funny? Are you laughing at me? Then you're like, oh, fuck, I'm dead. This is not going to turn out well. Oh, that's great. Well, I want to kind of lead into our next topic. This is kind of current events. And Jeff and I have actually talked about this before. It's current because Sandy Peterson made a really funny video about it. And I know that, Jeff, you take a lot of your inspiration, like you said, from the Pulp guys. And I love all the Pulp people, but especially Lovecraft. Lovecraft, when I first I didn't read Lovecraft like 1980. I mean, I was in high school. I wasn't familiar with him, and I did see the night galleries they based on his stories and thought, oh, this Lovecraft guy's kind of weird. And so, the last 20 years or so, or maybe a little longer than that, Lovecraft's come under fire because I guess people are really starting to pay attention to his letters and what he wrote and what he said, and He's gotten hammered to the point where the Necronomicon has taken his image off the award they give out every couple of years.
I didn't even realize that. Holy shit.
That was a few years back. They took his image off there. A woman of color had won the award, and I think she complained about it. I am sorry about that. That was a warning on my phone for start. We got thunderstorms rolling in here. It's starting to. I hear them. Right. If I go off the air, you'll know exactly what happened. It wasn't because I touched a button. I'm an idiot. That's true. But it's because
it wasn't thunder. It was a tornado warning.
No. Let me see. Well, I better check then, just in case. Yes. But no. Okay, I think it's just still a thunderstorm. But so. Sandy Peterson had a funny video the other day. It was called "Is Lovecraft Racist?" And instead of some long explanation, Sandy just says for the camera says yes, and then that's the end of the video. Video over, haha, joke, whatever. And obviously, looking back on him, yes, he was racist. Even by the morals of the time, he was racist because but it's interesting because we have the cancel culture nowadays. So you can't accept people for what they used to be based on the feelings of the past. You have to cancel them based on how we feel now, which would literally cancel probably 90% of the population that lived in the 1930s, because people just believed some really, really crazy stuff that was not true at all. And I'm just interested. I know Jeff and I have talked about this quite a bit about how much we love Lovecraft, but you have to look past what he is and who he is and what he's done to the actual content of the story.
Right.
So how do you feel about that, Jeff?
So,
do you ever get any friction on that?
Yes. Well, here I give a sort of analogy to it, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but take Tom Cruise, for instance. He's a complete fruitcake with his Scientology and his worldviews and everything else. But you know what? I love his movies.
Sure.
I don't really
they're
care.
good. They're great.
I don't really follow his personal life and judge. I don't judge his films based on his personal opinions and actions.
Right.
So I try to have that separation, because if you start to go down that rabbit hole, then you're going to start to eliminate all kinds of things that you might otherwise never be affected by if you didn't know these things about them.
Right.
So yes, I'm aware of it.
Too much information, really. Think about it.
Very few people in the 30s. I have a couple of books of the letters that Howard. For those that know, Howard and Lovecraft were very good friends. They never met each other met in person, but they would write voluminous. Their correspondence were pages and pages. Because back then you didn't have phone calls, so you had to write letter. I've got a book right here. I was just reading the other day. It's probably buried under here. It's I'll find it. But it's just some really interesting stuff, and you can see how they were very, very much men of their times about how they looked at the world and how they looked at other people. It's really hard for me to hold people to the standards of nowadays, because science is advanced, everything's advanced, and yet we somehow expect people to believe, like we get mad at doctors. Okay.
Perfect timing.
We get mad at doctors, but back in couple of years ago, they used to bleed patients, thinking that's the craziest thing ever.
Right. We still have the barber poles that signify it, right?
But that was the way you treated patients. That's what they knew. That's all they knew is to bleed people. Yeah, and so I find it hard to give these guys a hard time based on how we feel now. But yeah, it's a question I'm sure you have to come, because not just Lovecraft, but Howard also, who's a big inspiration to you. Now I know Ashton Smith was probably a little more enlightened than both of them, just from what I've read about him. But they still grew up in that same era. They're all pulp writers, and they kind of all had that, that same kind of, just, I don't know what you call backwards worldview of the world.
Sure. I mean, their worldviews during their time, you could definitely argue that some of their views were inappropriate even for their time in the 1930s. And I understand that, and I appreciate that. But however, from the perspective of a fiction reader and a game designer, I'm not focusing on that. I personally am focusing on the fiction. It's so it's just not something that I choose to eliminate from my sphere of influence because of their personal opinions. Just like I made with the comparison with Tom Cruise of today, or anybody that's like that may have extremist worldviews or homophobic views or racist views or anything like that. So I try to just stick with the entertainment side of things and not get into those types of social issues, because that's not what the purpose of my game is.
Sure.
Well, and we kind of actually touched on this a little bit before we even got into the podcast, but somebody like Zach Smith in our gaming community, personally, my personal opinion of an individual is not very high. However, my opinion of the work that they've written, for the most part, is very exceptional. I think they've done some excellent work. I still don't like Vornheim. I think Vornheim is shit. That's my opinion. Glenn will probably fight me about that one day. But I think that like Bread and Blood and Land is probably one of the top 5 RPG releases in this century. And I think that's important to acknowledge. You don't have to agree with a person's worldview or what they did or what they are accused of to appreciate the actual product, the actual fiction or work that they've produced. I mean, I think that you can separate the two. And I think that, again, part of the problem with today's society is we have so much knowledge at our fingertips that we are now making decisions based upon, well, if I knew that Howard was such a piece of shit back in the 30s, people never would have read his stuff. They wouldn't. Probably they wouldn't have cared because it was Pulp Fiction, and you're not going to be writing that stuff if you were a teetotaler. It's how it is. So judging the past or judging people even now, judging their work, I can judge a person separately from their work. I guess what I'm trying to say, and I think that is the standard we should be thinking about, especially people dead that aren't making money off their IP anyway. I mean, Howard is not, making money off his IP. Lovecraft is not making money off his IP. So, you're not hurting those people. So
sure,
I don't know.
Well, there's a pulp writer. There's a pulp writer of the early part of the 20th century named Sax Rohmer, and who was very popular. I mean, his stuff would sell tons. Yeah. And he created a villain called Fu Manchu. And his depictions of Fu Manchu were extremely racist because at the time, Asian people were vilified. And Fu Manchu, while being a super genius, and I mean, it's not like he makes Fu Manchu a stupid person. He's incredibly intelligent, super genius, but it's extremely racist. It's very stereotypical because of course he's actually super evil too, and he's a super scientist that makes weird creatures and viruses that kill people. So it's just he's a bad guy. He's a bad dude. Matter of fact, all the Asians in Sax Rohmer stories are really bad dudes. But his stuff is just there's. The problem with Sax Rohmer versus the guys we're talking about is Sax Rohmer stuff really there was really nothing. It was just pure pulp. It wasn't really very well written. It wasn't the kind of stuff that we were reprinting now. We don't reprint it because it's so over the top and it's so, reductive of stereotypical of Asians. But yet, the reason we print Howard and Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith is because their stuff still has a lot of literary merit. It's not just pulp fiction. I mean, you have people that write dissertations on these guys now because their stuff they had something. They were there from the beginning, and there's so many writers writing now that basically owe their careers. I mean, Stephen King used to, before Lovecraft got canceled, Stephen King wrote Lovecraft pastiches. He used to praise Lovecraft. Of course, now he's kind of one of those guys that, now, I don't like him anymore now. But,
I
never liked him.
I don't think he can say that. He has a lot of
books. No, I don't think so because, I've sort of discerned a lot of vague allusions to Lovecraftian type things, even going up to From a Buick 8, which was one of the last novels that I read by him. It had definitely Lovecraftian influence in it.
He's a huge influence of Lovecraft influence on King. Whereas Sax Rohmer was kind of more of just a pot boiler, I guess. He just kind of churned out stuff, and it was really not that great. I've read some Rohmer stuff. It's fun, but probably the best thing to be said about Sax Rohmer is they created the character Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, based on his writings, and Shang-Chi's awesome. And it's a great comic book. But and it actually has Fu Manchu in it too. But other than that, there's very little literary merit in anything Sax did. Yet we're still here looking for the next Robert E. Howard, aren't we? And we're looking for the next Clark Ashton Smith and the next, H.P. Lovecraft, because they were so talented. That they were just amazing in what they did, and their stuff. You can read it now. I mean, the best thing you can say about it is Lovecraft stuff's still scary now. You read it now, it can still.
It's
it can
disturbing.
still, it's very disturbing.
Oh yeah, it
it's
has
still
that sort of
frightening.
same effect. Yeah, it has that same sort of effects that Edgar Allan Poe still has, right? It can sort of conjure up these emotions of fear in you. That's
right. I mean, like, I guess modern day would be kind of Clive Barker, but Clive Barker smacks you in the face, whereas Lovecraft gets into your head. And I think that's the difference. I mean, because they couldn't back then. It wasn't acceptable to describe things and be in your face. So instead, they had to get in your head, and I think that's why they are timeless, because it's something that for even the more modern era where we're like, oh yeah, we can, but the stuff that gets into your head is the stuff that you don't forget.
Sure, like when you watch a classic horror movie, right? And from the 1950s or the 1960s.
Oh, yeah, like The Birds.
Say you see a woman or a man walk through a door, and the door slowly parts behind them, and then you hear them erupt with this blood-curdling scream. Now, you don't know what happened. It's all in your imagination what may have happened based on what was going on in the story. In today's filmmaking, they're going to show you every instance of that, and they're going to CGI everything and show you this massive, horrible thing that happened to the person, so that nothing is left to the imagination.
You're right, and I think that it's a loss, and I think. Oh God! What was that damn shaky film that the Blair Witch Project?
Yeah, Blair Witch Project. Yes,
that kind of went back to that idea of how can we bring back. I thought it was pretty shitty, but at least it allowed. If you bought into it, your mind would fill in the blanks. And at least I respected that aspect of it.
Yeah, I thought it was innovative.
Yeah. Did anybody see Color Out of Space with Nick Cage? I mean, it looked like. I mean, anything Nick Cage does is over the top. I've heard good and bad about it. That's one of my favorite Lovecraft stories. And I think the problem with Lovecraft is he's so hard to get to do well, because for some reason people think gore is Lovecraft. That's not his bag at all. And I remember there was the Masters of Horror series that was out it's been about 10 years now. They did. Dreams in the Witch House is probably my other favorite Lovecraft story, and it was okay up until the first person got butchered and blood flew everywhere. I was like, no, this is Lovecraft at all. And then it went even farther afield than that, and then I was like, okay, this, I don't know why. It's kind of the same thing with Howard. I'm always so fond of saying this. The next movie that they make of Conan that uses a story that Howard actually wrote will be the first one. Because they still have never actually adapted a Howard story, which he was a great writer. His stuff, I mean, Beyond the Black River would make a great movie. Tower of the Elephant would make a great movie. The closest you get is
The Pigeons from Hell?
Yep, Pigeons from Hell, which wasn't bad. I mean, that before it was. That was the old. It wasn't. What show was that? That was. What year? What year was that? I can't. That's been a while, and I can't remember. I can't remember which one that was, but. Some of the night galleries were okay, the Lovecraft ones, but those are, I mean, that's TV. They were okay, but they were still, for some reason, like I said, Lovecraft has got it's got stuck in with, hey, there's a lot of gore, a lot of crazy stuff, and there's people blood everywhere, and that's not his bag. It's never been his bag. And so most of his horrible stuff happens off screen, and usually somebody goes crazy because they saw something. They don't even tell you what they saw. It's just so terrible they just went nuts. And back in the 30s, that was scary, because if you went nuts in the 20s and 30s, you got put in the sanitarium. Those wasn't a great place to be. So somebody going crazy, seeing something that drove them insane, that's horrible for people of that age, whereas now we're like, oh, well, that's, so he went crazy, he forgot everything. Well, that's nowadays isn't that big a deal.
Give them some meds and they'll be fine.
Hey, you got a vacation. Yeah, take some Xanax. He'll be fine next week. But,
no. Getting back to our special guest, Jeff. John Miller wants to know, do you have any modules or other projects in the works from Northwind Adventures apart from the 3rd edition of Hyperborea?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we're going to sort of bundle up with the release of the new edition is a first level adventure by David Prada. And it is called The Late Trapper's Lament. It is a nice little adventure for first or maybe second level characters. that serves as a good dip your toes into this setting in this game. So that will be something that folks can add on with the purchase of the new edition of the game, or they could just buy it itself or whatever. But then we have two other adventures. The one that I mentioned earlier that I'll be running at North Texas, I'll probably be running it at Gamehole Con too, and that is the Vanishing Isles of the Summer King by Jonathan Bingham. And then we have another one called The Thousand Eyes of Thamaugorgon, and that one is by Ben Ball. Ben wrote Beneath the Comet for us. He's a great writer. It's one of our most popular adventures, and he's done some editing work for us as well. So he's got a very fertile imagination, diabolical. It's great stuff. And so we have those 3 modules that are all
all add-ons
in progress. Yeah. No, those the 2 that I mentioned, the ones.
I'm actually taking what's going to happen, just so people are going to go, oh, what happened? Because we all want to know what the
missions for now. But so most of the modules that are in progress right now, the 3 that I mentioned, those are basically pretty much done with respects to the actual drafting of the manuscripts. And so I haven't to answer your question, I don't actually seek out writers. I have a pretty reliable core stable of a handful of folks who are writing for the game, and myself included, working on various projects, and it basically fills up the schedule.
Okay, well, that's a fair enough answer. Somebody was just asking in the chat if something happened with the stream. I don't know, but we had 15 viewers and slowly but quickly went down to 5. Now we're back to 11. I guess there was an internet. So some people apparently got booted.
Maybe we're having thunderstorms like we have. I mean, it's literally. I'm sitting here literally, and the building I'm in shaking because the thunder. It's like boom. I thought it was a truck unloading something because we're in a warehouse district here. I thought it was a truck unloading something. I'm like, no, it's a gigantic thunderstorm. So maybe they're having thunderstorms there in the Midwest, and maybe I'll get sucked up on screen and just see me just whoosh. And I'll be holding this Castle Zagyg. Like, no.
I'll be like, is it still unwrapped? Will it survive?
No, that box is too cheap. It won't, unfortunately. No, I may not either. So I don't know. I'm glad you're worried more about the box than me. That's
well,
great.
I can tell you which box is not going to survive. The Swords and Wizardry white box.
That was really bad.
What except the box I gave away had split corners when the damn thing arrived in the mail.
Yeah, that was bad. That was actually a pretty good set too. Except that box is in. You know what? It's tough to do boxes well. Jeff did a great box for his first edition, and I don't know why Jeff did a box, because if he ever talked to Zach Glazer at any time of his putting together his Kickstarter, I'm sure Zach would have said don't do boxes. But he did. He put together a box. It was a really nice box. I still have my original box. Also, it's really, really good. Really, I think I blew a corner or two out when I was messing around with it. I put something really heavy on it for a few years, and so. But yeah, those were nice boxes. Now. Why did you decide to do a box set? Because nobody does box sets anymore. It's crazy talk.
Right. So I mean, I was really trying to. I had this idea in my head that I really wanted it to be a homegrown project, that it was going to be like a labor of love, if you would. And I was very fond of spiral bindings, because I love the way they lay flat on the table when you can open them up to any page and flip the thing over and lay it flat in front of you. So I really wanted that type of box set that had those kind of spiral bound books and a set of dice and a map, character sheets, the whole thing, the whole shebang in one box. And I was really fascinated with that idea. But it became more sensible to go to hardback format after that, just for so many reasons, for ease of use, that they are so much more durable, especially if you get the Smithsonian binding. And there's also a sort of intangible that a lot of people don't really know about, that we have to deal with on the publishing side of things, and that's the way shipping works with box sets, because
media mail, they can't be.
Yeah, you can send a book. You can send a book media mail, but you can't send a box set media mail, because that's a game. A game is a game, and even though the book is a game, it's still a book.
It's not. Yeah.
So it gets expensive. So
don't put a bookmark with your book, because that could change what it.
By the way, that's one of the reasons Frog Out Games doesn't do box sets anymore either, because the shipping kills us. Because it's and not only that, we do a lot of print on demand. Well, you can print a book on demand. You can't print a box set on demand. That's so
right. So box sets do not count as media mail. And the other thing too about box sets is they're a lot more fragile. So if you get some overzealous postal worker who beats on the package, and then it's going to get split, and then you have to deal with more damages with box sets.
I need to reach up there. Let me stand on a few of these game boxes.
Sure.
Well, people forget the golden age of the box set of TSR was the 80s, 90s. But they weren't shipping those. Those were going on the shelves of Walden's and B. Dalton books and hobby stores. They weren't being shipped. So, and then they were actually pretty good boxes. Most of my TSR boxes have held up.
Yeah.
But that was a different era. They didn't. They were being shipped. They were being shipped to the stores, and the stores were putting them out on the shelves.
They were being. But I had a comic book store back in the 90s, and I was picking up those box sets directly at my hobby store distribution center. So I remember those thin box sets that they did for like Dark Sun and Al-Qadim and stuff like that. Those were very thin box sets.
Yeah, and they get and then to this day it's hard to find one in the shrink that's not destroyed. Those came in for a lot of abuse.
Yeah,
but I think my Undermountain box is still in pretty good shape. They made some pretty solid box sets back there, but like I said, they weren't shipping them. They were just sticking them on the shelf, and then they went straight from there to your house. So nowadays, when you have to ship box sets, you have to package them carefully too, just like you would, shipping a Swordsmen Sorcerers box set or anything.
Yeah, shipping a book is going to be a lot easier, and for a lot of publishers, again, that print on demand option, like you said, Mike, with not that we're going to get print on demand, because Jeff publishes books that are too fucking big to put in print on demand.
Oh my God, that'd be a hernia starter if you try to do this print on demand. Yeah,
print on demand. It's like, well, I got one book, but immediately became multiple books because the binding wouldn't hold because it was so big.
Yep.
So. Well, there's one thing I want to touch on that we haven't touched on, only because it is so bizarre. I think it's something that we need to mention.
Ooh, well, I definitely got to do this. And I don't even know what this is.
Yes, you know what it is. Jeff Goldblum. Now.
Oh, yes. Well, that's King Mr. Bizarre himself, yeah.
Yes, Jeff Goldblum is going to be doing a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Okay, I'm looking at the article on Gizmodo at the moment, and yes, Jeff Goldblum, Jurassic Park, Independence Day, is going to play Elven sorcerer Balmer in a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. As they put it, this is a true statement of something that's going to happen in our reality.
Is this character a quirky, sort of smart but absent-minded, fast-talking?
I don't
know. You never know.
Okay, so and this is an existing podcast, which means at some point I'm going to have to listen to a few episodes. Goldblum will be joining Dark Dice, an actual play D&D podcast that began in 2018. It's about a group of adventurers who embark on a journey into the ruinous domain of the Nameless God, according to the official site. Balmer will make his debut on May 12th when the series returns to begin its second storyline. Yeah.
I have prediction. Jeff has never played D&D, and they just told him, look, it doesn't matter. we don't really go by the rules. It's like the Critical Role thing. It's like the Critical Role. You're basically just playing a part. Just go wild. I would watch just because Jeff Goldblum is a quirky, wacky dude, and he's probably going to have fun with it. But I mean, I remember when he was in the Marvel movie. When he was in the Thor Ragnarok, he didn't know any Marvel characters. Yeah. They asked him a question about that, and he's like, "I don't know." Because they said, "Well, you played the Grandmaster. Did you read up on any Grandmaster?" And he's like, "Who? What? What? I have no clue. I mean, what Marvel comics?"
I just played a role. Listen, the article ends with, "I want to know everything about this. Why? Why Dark Dice? Has Goldblum ever even played an RPG before? What's Balmer's level going to be? What spells can he cast? Can I even imagine a world where somebody's going to ask Jeff goddamn Goldblum to make a saving throw?"
Well, what spells he cast? Yeah, so if Jeff says, "I'm casting a spell," the DM's going to say, "No, Jeff, shut the fuck up. That's not in the book," and move on. No. They're going to sit there and go, "Oh, that is so cool. You're making up your spell right here at the table where you do this, and yeah,
I want to cast a spell that makes my food taste better, and at the same time serves itself." Okay, we use up a first level spell slot for that one.
I think we can blame Critical Role for this. Critical Role.
Sure. Can you imagine his agent? So listen, Jeff, I've got this great deal for you. It's a new media called podcast. And you're going to play a magician. Oh, really? Well, that's intriguing. All right. So how am I going to do this? You're going to sit at a table with a bunch of geeks, all right? And maybe a nerd or two. And you're going to improv using dice. And you're going to play this magician, and you're going to say what your magician is doing. But you can do it in your role because it's a role-playing game. I'd be like, do I get paid for this shit? I don't know.
I mean, it hasn't acted in a year. I mean, all these guys, look, these stars are all they're a bit out of work for a year. They didn't film anything, so yeah, they're maybe they need a payment on the Black Lotus in their driveway. I don't know. So they, maybe that's why they're considering doing things like this, because his agent said, "Hey, this is it's going to be, you're just going to play yourself. You're just, that dude you played in the Thor movie, just do him." As Eric Webb said, just be the Grandmaster and just play D&D. It's the same thing. You're just going to love it. And so,
and now apparently this podcast, and it's not a YouTube, it's an audio podcast. So maybe he just does his role from home. But apparently they record with like a live orchestra, so they have like real music. They pump in after the fact. I got to listen to this, and I'll take the hit, Mike. I'll take the hit.
Thank you.
I'll listen to this. At least one episode from the first season. At least one episode from each season, so I can see how it progressed and learn about, do we need an orchestra in our real plays? I mean, maybe we do. Maybe when I play Hyperborea 3rd edition, I need to have a full orchestra in the background doing that great Conan music, but do it live.
We do that once in a while. We just had our, I play in a weekly game, and I wasn't DMing this week, and one of our other DMs, he likes to do background music once in a while. So this week he was playing the music from Jason and the Argonauts.
Oh, nice choice.
That's a fun little thing. He hits the music when we get into a combat situation, so you got the music going. While the dice are rolling. It's pretty fun.
To this day, whenever I hear Zeppelin, I immediately think of D&D because we played in the late 70s, and I think Zeppelin was pretty much our soundtrack for every D&D game we played from like 78 through about 80 or so. So yeah, music can definitely create a mood there.
Oh yeah, the Conan soundtrack, Eric Webb. Yeah, that's a classic too.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff in that.
Doris.
Zeppelin. I think we did a lot of Iron Maiden, Fate's Warning. A lot of, yes, and that's what, Jeff. Since we have you here, and before we decide to sign out for the night, but I got a question for you.
Sure.
Why is it that when it comes to gamers from our era, I'm going to be 54, you're 50. Mike's the old man in the room. I'm not gonna tell his age.
83. Yeah.
83. 83 going on 58. But my question is, why is it that gamers from our era listen to heavy metal music? I mean, that was our. We joked that it's our soundtrack, but it was our soundtrack. It was playing all the time. My players would come over with guitars in their hands, playing riffs for their band Cursed Earth. If I was too slow in keeping the game moving. So I think there's
a sort of synergy between the topics of metal and D&D, because a lot of metal, especially from that time period, is a lot of storytelling, and it's a lot of fantasy type storytelling. So, for example, you brought up Iron Maiden, right? So I remember in 1984 when the Power Slave album came out, and I was first in line to get it. I'd already listened to the single of 2 Minutes to Midnight when it had come out, and I was so pumped to get the actual record. And so when I picked it up and I saw all that artwork inside, and I was reading the lyrics of Power Slave, I immediately went to my Deities and Demigods book, and I'm looking at all the Egyptian mythos gods. And of course, I had to. This became a thing in my game that I was running for my friends in the neighborhood, that I was working in the Egyptian mythos. So I think that it's sort of D&D sort of inspires and metal together sort of inspire this, like wanting to read something else, wanting to research something, wanting to bring these different elements together. And I think it just makes it fun. And so we explored all that stuff when we were teenagers in the 80s or whatever. And it sticks with us. We're nostalgic about it, and because it was such a fun time in our lives.
It's funny because I look at Iron Maiden now as an adult, and I go back and I'm like, wow, these songs, they did research. They did historical research and putting these songs together.
They were messing around. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
I actually brought my cassette to school for my honors English class because we were going over, I guess, poetry. I'm like, hey, I want to play Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. My teacher allowed me to bring in the cassette. And she was just like, I'm impressed that they kept it like legit. And they did a great job. And I was
especially the parts that were directly from the Samuel Taylor poem.
Yeah, they read it. So Mike, we got your thunderstorm here in New York right now, and I hear like raindrops coming down the size of quarters. Lovely.
Well, see, our jam was, so I'm a little older than you guys. Our jam was a little different because we weren't quite, the heavy metal stuff was just coming around the 80s, and I graduated high school in 81. So our stuff was more Zeppelin, Rush, maybe Jethro Tull. So I mean, hard rock, but not metal. Definitely metal. Okay. I think metal happened because remember the D&D reached its apex of popularity in I think 83 or 84 when it was outselling Monopoly. I mean, it was the best selling game in the world, and I think that's when most people came into the hobby right about then, and that's when metal was just starting to really get going. Yeah, there was metal before that, but that's when it was really starting to get going. I think we just missed it. My generation maybe by a few years, unless you're Stephen Corcorni.
The shirt that I'm wearing right now, Rainbow. This is Richie Blackmore's band that followed Deep Purple when he formed this band with Ronnie James Dio. And this album, Rainbow Rising,
it's a great album too. Yeah,
that has the song Stargazer on it, which I think that song came. I think that was like 1978, and you can't find a more metal meets D&D type song ever than Stargazer.
But even that's more like hard rock than I think metal. I mean, to me, it's not what metal would become in the 80s.
Sure, but it has that sort of that Richie Blackmore at the time was sort of exploring that sort of neoclassical style when everyone else was playing blues, right? And he's obsessed with Beethoven and bringing that into music.
Black Sabbath was a big one too. We listened to Black
Sabbath.
Of course,
the riff.
Yes, and so that was kind of the hard rock, and that kind of segued into metal. I think because I know so many people from the era that you guys are in that are just, I mean, that was it. That was their soundtrack. It was D&D playing D&D to metal. You
weren't using Kenny Rogers as your soundtrack back then. It would be interesting, right?
Okay, put on the gambler, man. We're about to take this lich down.
Know when to hold up, when to hold up, know when to fold up, when to fold up.
Although the trailer for Army of the Dead uses the gambler, it's a great trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer for Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's zombie movie that's coming out next month, the gambler is the soundtrack, and it's great. You just got to see it. It works. Yeah. He makes it work. It looks great. It looks like a fun movie too. But you were listening to the Carpenters. I mean, come on, man. You had to listen to something that was like, wow, it's really getting into it, especially when you're in those big, massive combats and stuff.
Right.
I remember my mom would go when we lived at home. We used to play D&D. She'd go to bed, and we had a little stereo that we had by the table. We tried to keep it low, but sometimes you just had to crank it a little bit. And I just remember her coming in there going, "Guys, I have to work tomorrow." We're like, "Oh, we're sorry, Mrs. B." They're like, "Oh, we're sorry, Mrs. B." But we just had to get it. It was this gay, we really had to get in this thing. She's like, "I have to work tomorrow. Keep it down." So we'd crank it down low. And then, okay, she's asleep. She's turning up a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Again. No. Right. I don't think she ever did it twice. I think we were pretty good about this. But yeah, we had to see. We weren't like you guys in the Midwest. We didn't have basements in Texas. Texas didn't have basements. We had garages, and garages get fucking hot in the summer. So we would try to play inside. You weren't playing outside the porch. You didn't have a basement. You had a hot garage, unless you were like us, and we had a window unit blowing cold air into the garage. Thank God. But yeah, that's so cool because and if you have ever been to a convention with Stefan Porcorny, the brainchild behind Dwarven Forge, his love of metal is well known to the point where he brings his own mini stereo into the common areas of the conventions and cranks it up pretty loud.
Oh yeah.
And
I can tell you a funny story about that.
Oh, please do it.
So a few years ago at Gary Con, Stefan had that little. It's like a Marshall, right? Isn't it like a little Marshall speaker?
It's one of those. It's a little thing, but it has a huge sound. It's a little. It's
unbelievable. So he's cranking the Sabbath all night, and we're drinking. We're drinking beer. We're drinking whiskey.
You can't even hear yourself think when he turns it up. that's how loud.
Oh right.
Stefan plays. He plays it really loud.
And so his girlfriend Anne. Who's such a sweet lady, she's tapping him on the shoulder and she's saying, "Stefan, our plane leaves early in the morning. It's 3 a.m. It's 3:30 a.m. whatever it was." She's like, we have to go back to our room and go to bed. And so Stefan felt like he felt beholden to all the people who were there. He felt like he couldn't end the metal. The Sabbath had to continue.
If he's gone, it's over.
He puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, "Jeff, you have to keep the Sabbath going for me. Keep the speaker and give it back to me tomorrow." And I said, "Okay, I'll keep the Sabbath." And Anne was the voice of reason. She was like, "I don't think this is a good idea."
So Stefan looked upon you and he said, "Jeff, that's the guy that's going to be able to do it."
I channel you.
Said, so she's saying, "I don't know about this." She's like, "Are you going to be able to get us this speaker back at 7 a.m.? Now it's 3:30 a.m. I'm thinking, get you this speaker back at 7 a.m. I'm thinking, Stefan, maybe we should listen to Anne. I think maybe she knows what she's talking about here.
Oh my God, we're gonna miss Stefan at North Tech this year. He's going to take an extra year, COVID stuff. So he's going to run some online games, but we love having Stefan at the con. He is an absolute character, and he's great. Yeah, he's one of those guys that's great for the hobby. He's great for the hobby because he never met somebody he didn't like, and he just he goes in the room and it's like, "Oh, what's going on?" And he's just like
the life of the party has arrived.
Major.
Like, hello, everybody.
Yeah. If I drink, I could do a pretty good Stefan. I'm not going to do it here on the show, but give me a few drinks in North Texas and I'll do a Stefan.
There you go.
It'll knock your socks off. You'll love it. No, he's a great guy. We love him. And it was weird because Doug has no fear when it comes to guests. He calls anybody. He's called Monty Cook. He'll call anybody. It doesn't matter. He just calls them. And he just I'm thinking, there's a certain level that we're just never going to get as guests, because we're just this little con. But over the years, he's gotten Larry Elmore, Tracy Hickman, Margaret Weiss. Just cold calls them. And so he just cold called Stefan one day. And Stefan's like, how come you haven't asked me before? I've heard about how great your con is. Of course I'll come. And I'm like, I didn't think he'd want to come because
that's the way he talks. That's great.
He'd set up all his stuff. I was like, he's like, no, we promised we'd give him the third, whatever floor, we're going to give him the conference room there so he can set up his stuff and do whatever he wants. Nobody else can go in there. So it was great because he gets his own little staging area, sets up all his gigantic dungeons. And these, if you've never seen these things, he has lights on them. It's crazy. These things sell out immediately or they fill up immediately because, he's a fun dungeon master. And like I said, just looking at his miniature setups is ridiculous, the stuff he does.
Yeah, his games are fun too. I've played in them a few times. And he's played in my Hyperborea games. He loves them.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
We've had fun playing each other's games.
Very cool.
well, why don't you tell us some of your stories of celebrities that have said, because I've got a celebrity story that I share constantly because I just love to share it. But I've had Errol Otis play in my game not once but twice. He liked
I've had Errol in one of my games. Yeah,
damn it, he has
Errol and Skip Williams.
Nice.
So because I was doing for a few years in a row before COVID. We were doing Celebrity Hyperborea, so I was running a late night game, and it included various special guests from Gary Con, but also a limited amount of tickets that were made available. So they would typically go to like platinum and diamond badge people, that would grab these tickets to play in the celebrity game. So we've had some pretty cool people that have played in some of my games. Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool.
I did get stood up by Joe Manganiello.
That bastard.
He had a spot in my game. He didn't show up. I saw him the next day. I said, Joe, you didn't play in my game. He's like,
what happened?
He said, I was really burnt out and I overbooked myself. And the game that I was playing before yours went on for another hour. And he said, I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to be that guy.
Well, it's nice of him. Well, it's nice of him to actually have an explanation beyond.
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah, so that's
beyond that. I was hungover.
He's a nice guy. So, Eric, what celebrities have you had playing your games, Eric?
Absolutely none.
Oh, damn. Sorry,
no,
man.
Dude, listen. Who cares, really, right?
Sorry.
Listen, I got to say this. I've never not had a table that wasn't full or better than full. It makes you feel good when you walk into the hall and somebody's like, yo, Tenkar, do you guys still have room in your game? I go, there's at least one seat because I stand. So I'm sure. And if not, as long as you can belly up a chair to their table, I will keep adding players to it.
Yeah, you did that. You got my daughter in one of your games once.
Yeah, she was. That was
Connecticut, ShireCon.
Yes.
I don't like to brag, but I'm going to brag anyway because I do like to brag actually. But I run the B1 in Search of the Unknown game, and I'm not running it this year for the first time I didn't run it last year either. So I ran it for the first. Didn't run it year one, so I ran it for conventions 2 through 11. Okay. And for 10 years running, I was the first game to sell out every year. Literally, it would open up sales, and boom, it's sold out within 5 seconds. And I don't know why, because I don't think I'm that great a DM, but we do have a fun time of the game. And it kind of sucks because when that happens, you feel this, normally there's no pressure, right? You're just running a game. It's fun. But yeah, when you have someone like Errol Otis in a game, Jeff, or something like that, you feel like this, oh God, I can't be just regular DM guy. I got to be kick-ass DM guy because, I don't want to be, and I had a little performance anxiety in front of Errol because but Errol is great because both times he's played my game, he just played a cleric. He goes, I'll just play a cleric. He let everybody else choose a character and said, I'll just choose a cleric. And really, he just watched everybody and he would heal people. And, he was really there just to kind of experience the whole thing, not to make it about him.
He's kind of low key in my games too.
Very low key,
I found Skip Williams to be a lot more like a lot more animated type of player than Errol is.
Yeah, so it's fun sometimes to see these guys and see just how they play. But I was really impressed by Errol. Just like I just want to say and he just likes to. He loves playing games. It's so cool. A lot of these guys that still love playing games that much, because you figure after all these decades they'd be burnt out by now. But there's guys like Steve Winter and Errol. I mean, these guys, they love playing still. They just love to play games, and they, if they're not playing in a RPG, they'll get a board game out. One year I remember Steve brought Knights of Camelot, the old TSR game, and they had a game that went on for like 8 hours, and Errol Otis was in that game, and I think Zeb Cook was in that game, and I was like, man, I can't believe this guy sat there for 8 hours, but they just love playing games, and that's just such a cool deal.
Yeah,
I mean, hopefully I'll be want to do that too. Oh dear.
Didn't Zeb run some TSR Conan at one of the North Texas? Maybe 4 years ago. I can't remember
if he ran I think he finally ran a Conan game. He usually runs an Oriental Adventures game. And I think that 1 year he by popular demand, he ran a Conan game. I don't know much about it. I need to put a feeler out and see how that game went, because the Conan RPG was always so hilarious to me, Jeff, because it was just it just seems so unnecessary. It's like, okay, we're going to have, there's 5 players. Okay, so here's our 5 characters. We have Conan, Valeria, this and that. All you want to be is Conan. There's no point of being anybody else, because Conan can do what everybody else can, but better. Matter of fact, you don't even need the other 4 characters. I just thought that was the most hilarious RPG ever written, because I'm like, you're going to want to play. I can understand playing in the world of Conan would be great. But actually,
I would almost think that it would be better if you're running a game of it, that Conan is an NPC that makes some type of significant cameo appearance, but isn't in, because then if he's an NPC the whole time, then he's going to outshine the players, and the players feel robbed. They know that the NPC's stealing all the glory.
It's like the Indiana Jones game had the same issue, because you were supposed to play Indiana Jones, and you were sidekicks. Well, Indiana Jones can do everything your guy can do, but better. There's nothing that your guy can do that Indiana Jones can do. So that was kind of
you're not adding really anything to it.
No,
but it's kind of like when I was following, like, you couldn't buy every comic book you wanted to, but for the Conan stuff, I used to do King Conan, because I really got into the storyline. And King Conan gets you a situation where it's like, all right, Conan's a king, so now you can use him as a plot device, but you don't have to have him in the party.
Yeah,
we can certainly.
And they had his son Khan was
right. Yeah, plus they were going off script, because Howard really never wrote anything past when he had kids. He didn't write anything I don't think he had kids. Wasn't Sword of the Phoenix chronologically there's the chronologically, I think the Scarlet Citadel is after that. But then I'm talking about original Howard, not the Prestige, not the stuff by DeCamp and Carter. I think canonically, I don't think he ever had his sons. And then when DeCamp and Carter wrote the books, which actually weren't bad. They were actually not too terrible. When they wrote Conan the Owls is terrible. I'm sorry, but what was the one where they went to Stygia and they fought Thothamon because he kidnapped the son? I can't remember.
Is that the one by Paul? Is that the one by Paul Anderson?
No. That's by DeCamp and Carter. It's part of the quote unquote Ace series. Last of which was Isle of Conan the Owls, which is awful.
Right.
So the thing about King Conan is you can kind of go in any direction, because there's nearly nothing written about that. I guess that's what I was trying to say, is that you're just off on, you could just go whatever direction you want. I mean, he could even not be king for a while. Maybe he comes back, maybe he gets deposed, then he comes back and he's king later.
He's only king of Aquilonia, right? So if you can run an adventure that's in Zamora, the city of thieves, or you could have something that's in Cimmeria, in the borderlands there, or in Vanaheim or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like the MERP game. I mean, the Middle Earth role-playing game, which is so popular. I mean, you don't have Frodo and Sam and Aragorn in every game. Obviously, it's just, I mean, they're part of the world, but they're not going to pop in and kick ass on everything, and then say, "Hey, you guys, see you guys later. I got to go off to Gondor and take care of some shit." And no, that's they just don't deal with that. You're dealing with the world created by the author. So I can see that. That'd be fun. But yeah, Conan RPG. I'll have to ask Zeb if he remembers that. I seem to remember that happening, but I don't know how it went. I don't know if anybody played Conan, or I don't know who got to play Conan, because that's the main character. Told everybody everybody else, you just hang back here. I'm going to go just kick some ass and everything.
It's like you have to, if you're going to allow him to be a player character, it's almost like you have to have a roll off, right? And who gets to play Conan, because everybody wants to be Conan. So all right, roll. See who gets the highest roll on the D20.
All right, you're Conan. The rest of you are all hanger-ons. The rest of you are all disposable characters, but Conan can't die. Because then the game was over, right? You know, it's
I always talk Conan. About the most Conan, the most Howard Conan movie, which is the one that people don't like. Conan, it was Conan the Destroyer, which is probably my favorite Conan movie, because it's most like Conan's part of a party of adventures, and they're all getting together and going on a quest. Yeah, it's most like something Howard would write, even though it's got issues too. But still, that's to me most like a Conan book, and that's how you'd have to do a Conan role-playing game. Is okay, you're in this group, and everybody does something differently, really good, even better than Conan could do it, because Conan usually can do everything good.
Yeah,
but these guys
can. Party, right?
Yep,
that was a true adventuring party in that movie.
I watched Conan the Destroyer again a couple years ago. It held up pretty well. It was better than I remember it. I remember I didn't like it at the time, but I'm like looking at it now like, well, it was better than Jason Momoa Conan. That was terrible. And it's the first Conan movie is so, you know, and of course it was written by Jerry Conway and I believe Roy Thomas. So that probably is why it was Conan the Destroyer was much better than some of the other stuff. But
well, they knew the IP very well.
They were
they could be authentic to it. They were.
Yeah, they were both great writers.
Someday, Jeff, we're going to live to see a Conan movie based on something that Howard actually wrote. So,
Roy is, as far as I know, Roy is going to be in at Howard Days this year, which is a week after.
Oh, you're kidding me! That's awesome. And speaking of that, are you going to be able to make the trip to Cross Plains, or you're going to have to?
I don't think it's going to be this year. I'm hoping it would be next year, because everything was so last minute this year that I wasn't able to. But I'm hoping that next year I would stay for the Monday after and be able to make a little pilgrimage there.
The offer is open whenever you want to go. Just let us know. That would be fantastic. We'll load up the car and we'll make the 2.5-hour drive.
Now, do they have tours during the week at all?
They do by special request, because it's just old. Okay. The Howard Society is a bunch of older ladies that live in town, and you just call them up and they said, "Yeah, we'll be there at 10 o'clock or whenever," and they'll go meet you there and open the house up, and they take you through. It was just absolutely amazing. I mean, it's like you're on holy ground.
Mecca.
I mean,
it's just my Mecca.
Just seeing the room where Howard wrote all the stories. It's like it's big as a closet. It's tiny.
Yeah, it's a porch, right? It was a
screened-in porch. It's just crazy. Just looking at that, going, man, this house is so little, and so much came out of this tiny little house.
No.
And it almost burned down a few years ago. They had a huge fire in West Texas, and it burned up thousands of acres. It literally stopped right across the street. I mean, otherwise it would have just absolutely just burned the house to a crisp, because there was not all there is out there is little volunteer fire departments. They don't have proper fire departments. It's a really small town, but
there's a lot of areas. Yeah.
But yes, we will bring you. We brought Steve Winter one year,
love that.
And we will bring you. One of my favorite pictures ever is me and Steve Winter standing by the portrait of Robert E. Howard there in the house. It's awesome. So we will bring you, dude. You just have to just.
How about? Have you ever made the trip to see the Death Dealer statue?
No, where's that at?
It's somewhere in Texas.
Oh, I'll have to look it up now.
It's at an army base, I believe.
Really? Okay. Well, I got to look this up now.
Interesting.
That's the Frazetta, famous Frazetta thing. Yeah.
I looked it up to see how close it was to the con. I think it's 2 hours away from Dallas.
Okay, I'm interested. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to check that out one day then. Were you the one that posted you read the Death Dealer books finally?
Yeah, I was talking about it the other day.
They sounded pretty cool. I'll have to look those on. Those are probably hard to find, but
they really are, because they went out of print decades ago, and so now they're fetching ridiculous prices.
Yes. Well, I'm going to look for them, because that sounds right up my alley.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, Death Dealer's the famous Frazetta picture. The guy's got the giant axe. He's on the horse.
Right.
It's just classic, absolutely classic Frazetta. And they did
a man by the name of James Silk took Frazetta's paintings and basically turned them into a whole world that's sort of this sort of antediluvian setting that take in the area of the Mediterranean Sea, but the Mediterranean Sea is a forest at this time. And
very Carl Edward Wagner kind of anti-hero, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. I'm gonna look for him.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think we've come more than full circle. We covered a lot of ground, but most importantly, we covered something that neither Mike nor I knew ahead of time, which is Jeff was going to announce his upcoming Kickstarter. I'm very excited.
Very excited about that. Well, save something for North Texas, man. You got to have something to announce there. So don't tell everybody listening. Don't tell anybody. We're gonna just spring it on everybody at the convention. Don't let anybody know.
Oh no, I'm gonna be posting about it tomorrow. So
damn it! Awesome. All right, well, okay, well.
Well, but they're gonna have. If they want full details, they're gonna have to come and listen to this because
I wanted to give you guys the scoop first.
Thank you, sir.
And then N-World will be like, "Hey, there's a new astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers Hyperborea."
We got to have Jeff on again. We didn't even get to Clark Ashton Smith because he was the one guy I never read as a kid. I didn't read Clark Ashton Smith about 20 years ago.
I was late to the party as well.
Oh my God, this guy is incredible. I got on a Kindle. They had like complete works of Clark Ashton Smith for like $5 or something. And I worked through them alphabetically. I'm like, this is fucking amazing. I can't believe I never read this stuff. Yes.
Yep. His Zothique and his Hyperborea and Atlantis and Zikarf and Averoin, all that stuff. It's just I could go on all day about talking about Clark Ashton Smith.
Yep.
In fact, I did an episode of the Appendix N podcast, and so I was the resident expert on Clark Ashton Smith's Hyperborea book, and I talked about all the different stories in it and histories of it and all that. So I'd love to talk about that anytime.
We'll definitely have you back.
Sure.
You know what, Mike? I know that we're doing a good job with this this cast because most of our guests want to come back. A few kind of don't want to talk to us again, but most of them have a great time.
Does Jeff really want to come back? Because he's just saying this to make us feel good.
Yeah, he's going to see us at Texas, so he really can't. He can't be lying because. Listen, if he's running a booth at North Texas, he might need you or I to cover for him.
I'm just walking around free this time. I'm
all right. Way to go.
You know what? As am I, so it's going to be interesting.
The Black Blade guy's going to carry my stuff.
Nice. Okay. Very cool.
That works out well.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on the show. And
thank you for having me.
I think our first episode of Guests of NTRPG Con went great. And next week, Jason Braun's going to absolutely torpedo this thing. So, so thank goodness we had you on.
We'll probably lose some of the subscribers that we had.
Oh, we'll lose 20%. I'm calling it right now. 20% of the subscribers be gone.
Folks, again, if you're listening to this, whether it's live, whether it is later on in the week, we hit 411 subscribers today. That's awesome. I really can't thank you all enough. We're aiming to get to 500 by North Texas. If we do, it'd be awesome for all of you too. None of us here are medical professionals. We spoke a little bit about COVID earlier. Your situation is your situation. All I'm going to say is use your common sense. Keep yourself, your family, your loved ones healthy and safe. You can't help them if you yourself aren't healthy. I've got my vaccine. Mike has his.
I have both of mine as well.
Jeff has his. But those are personal decisions based upon our situations. Not telling you that you need to do such, but I'm saying use your common sense. That's all. Be safe. Be well. God bless. If you enjoyed this episode, if you're watching this later, comment, like, and. Knock on wood. I know it pisses off at least one of my listeners when I do that. I get IMs telling me, stop knocking on your fucking desk. Sorry. Knock on wood. I'll be back with you all tomorrow and 8 p.m. I believe it's myself and Glenn Hallstrom on Friday. All right, folks.